Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Making Action Happen. I'm your host, Brian McCain. Sarah is out paying bills right now and doing some Action 22 stuff, so it's going to be just me. So today, if you follow politics at all, specifically the 3rd District and now the 5th District and the 4th District, it's across the board open seats for the Republican seats.
It's mayhem, absolute mayhem.
And so what we're doing, featuring some of the candidates that are Action 22 members, we support our members. We don't endorse candidates, but we do support our members, including all candidates running for office, and offer them a platform to come on and kind of tell us what they're about. So today we have Russ Andrews. He's in town doing some politicking around Pueblo.
ABC, always beat campaign.
Yeah, exactly. So we invited him to come in and tell us about himself, his platform, why he's running, what he's going to do, and just pick his brain a little bit.
Sure.
So
all right.
Thanks for coming on and tell everybody about yourself.
Yeah, thanks, Brian. I appreciate it. I appreciate the platform here. Yeah. So thanks for having me on. I'm a conservative business owner from the Roaring Fork Valley near Glenwood Springs. I had a 15-year running weekly political talk radio show in Aspen. That's in Aspen. You heard that right?
So, wait, hold on. Rewind a second. So a conservative-leaning talk show in Aspen.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
So you had like 6 listeners.
No, it's amazing because the radio signal reached all the way to Vail.
Okay.
And then down to Rifle. And it's amazing, really, that we have so many people in our valley who are actual real conservatives, but they're swamped by the noise from the left. Yeah. So I gave those people a voice. And I mean, I get it all the time. People come up to me and thank me, for what I've done. But other people come up, and this is on video, so I'll show you. I've had this happen at least 50 times in 15 years. Well, I'll go to shake someone's hand, and Russ Andrews, wham, like it's spring-loaded. Back it comes. So I've had a lot of fun with that radio show. I understand radio is about entertainment. Mm-hmm. My campaign manager won't let me do one of my entertainment shticks today, though. So he weighs 260 pounds, so I'll listen. Yeah. All right. But,
I'm staring at you right now.
Yes, he is. Hi, Eric. I have a degree in marine engineering I achieved in 1983 from what is now the highest ranked mid-career earnings college in the country. So in other words, you graduate from my school, New York Maritime College, and 10 years out, you're making about $185,000 a year, the average.
Wow.
So that's pretty good. The degree I earned is marine engineering. And as a marine engineer, you learn how to design and operate mobile and stationary power plants. So I know how to run, natural gas, turbine power plants, obviously steam, oil-fired steam, coal. My roommate in college he focused on nuclear. And if you know anybody that worked in a reactor room in the nuclear Navy, they know my roommate. They had to go through his program.
And that's very very on topic for Pueblo right now, and we're going to do a show about it later. But we're going through this issue where Comanche 3 is being retired earlier than projected. I think it was going to be 2070 or 2080, and they keep pushing it back. And Sarah, my co-host, who's not here today, Sarah, she was on the PISAC, which was the Pueblo something energy. It's like a huge acronym, but they were put together. And it was business leaders, community leaders, industry leaders to figure out a replacement for Comanche 3. They released their findings last week, and one of the recommendations was a small modular nuclear reactor.
Sure.
And Pueblo has a history of being very anti-nuclear. Colorado in general has an anti-nuclear kind of stance. And a lot of that, I think, and we had an archaeologist that came on last week, and what he's doing is cataloging all the uranium mines in Colorado. Mm-hmm. And part of that stigma with nuclear is, the boom rush of uranium was in Colorado. Right. So you have thousands of these mines that there were no safety regulations, and there was some pretty bad fallout from it. Pardon the pun, but there was some health stuff that happened because literally the way he described it, you would walk across the mountain on the west slope, kind of by Grand Junction, have a Geiger counter, and if it spiked, you would dig a hole, pile up the dirt, and come in and sell it. Basically, that was it. Like
seriously.
No masks, no equipment. And the only person you could sell it to was the United States government. Mm-hmm. And they were just, it was more valuable than gold at the time. So everybody was out there doing it. So now you have thousands of these small mines that's uranium. It's just uranium tailings and then some of the chemicals they use to get out, along with the larger mines that we're dealing with it as well. And I was thinking about it, and we were talking after the show, and one of the political parties in Colorado says no nuclear, no new Colorado. you have rocky
no
flats.
energy.
Yeah,
is essentially
basically.
what they say.
Yeah, and I think that maybe how the problems we had in the past are not the problems we would have now with nuclear energy.
Mm-hmm. And we're at 4th, 5th generation designs. Mm-hmm. So this isn't Fukushima, which wasn't a bad design.
Yeah.
Just put in a bad spot.
Yeah.
And what happened there, the steam cycle is pretty simple. It's the first thing you learn on the very first day when you go to my school. Water comes out of the condenser, goes through the feed pumps, through the furnace, in the boiler, and then turns into steam, and then turns a turbine, and then goes back into the condenser.
Yeah.
So what happened in Fukushima was the feed pump that pressurizes the water that goes into the reactor vessel. In this case, it got swamped and it got shut down. I actually asked my roommate about this. I said, "Why don't they have a backup feed pump running? These things are huge and they suck up a lot of energy." Yeah. And that was the reason why it hurts the energy profile, but it would have saved the plant.
Yeah.
So that's what happened there. But the small modular designs aren't like that at all.
No, not at all.
Yeah. So there's a guy in our valley, Amory Levins. I love this guy. There were what we called, I'm a financial advisor of 36 years. And when I started with Merrill Lynch in 1987, Washington State had, I believe it was 3 nuclear power plants about to come online. And they were called the Whoops plants.
Whoops.
Yeah. And this is back when interest rates were higher. And they had issued tax-free municipal bonds yielding 8%. Amory Levins held that project up for 5 years under some environmental review. Well, in the meantime, they still had to pay interest on the bonds. That ratcheted up the price 40%. Now what does Amory say about nuclear power?
Likes it.
It's too expensive.
It's
too expensive because he drives the prices up.
Yeah.
So, they don't like energy in any form. We as capitalists understand that capitalism, the lifeblood of capitalism is energy. So this whole push for what I call red energy, it bleeds red ink, and we have to get about 2/3 of our components from communist red China.
Yeah.
It is the greatest misallocation of capital in the history of mankind, in my opinion. Yeah. And let me give you an example. What ostensibly is the reason to convert our internal combustion engine fleet to an EV fleet? What are we trying to accomplish?
Trying to save the environment.
Yeah. So doing so, if we took every car and every van in the United States, replaced them with EVs, it would reduce global emissions by 0.18%. So if there's anybody listening here, well, whatever, hi there. If there's anybody listening here from the Aspen City Council, that means that 99.82% of greenhouse gases will persist. So it's stupid. It's a misallocation. Think about that. You accomplish nothing by eliminating the whole United States automobile fleet.
Well, and in our business, what we do with Action 22, we focus on jobs and tax revenue, right? Mm-hmm. And so they're going to have to figure out a way to tax an EV because you don't have the gasoline tax.
Right. But you still have the roads.
Yeah. And you could say you could replace the mechanics jobs with, EV jobs, but I don't think there's a workforce for that. Even going back to nuclear, like they didn't say they're going to do nuclear, but that was a recommendation. And the biggest thing with it was the tax base and the jobs. So if we put in a solar field, that's like 3 jobs.
Yeah.
And the tax base is nothing.
Right.
But a nuclear, I think the report, you could go on their website, it was, 200 jobs and a huge tax revenue and high-paying jobs. But going back to the EV, but I will feel better driving an EV.
Yeah, right. Yeah, right. But it does nothing. That's my point. You can buy it all you want, pay extra. We subsidize it. It does nothing. It does nothing. The other point is our electrical grid isn't terribly stable as it is. Yeah. So these people want to replace baseline, always there electricity with intermittent, not always there electricity. And add 50% demand to the grid. Yeah. It can't work. It doesn't take an engineer to figure it out. It simply cannot work. So again, it's the greatest misallocation of capital in mankind, in my opinion.
Yeah. So, we covered energy a little bit.
Yeah, a little bit.
But, so why'd you decide to run? So you jumped into this race. So we had Congresswoman Boebert running, and we have various Republican candidates jumping in to primary her. More so now that she moved to the 4th district, which, if nobody knows, which everybody knows, but she decided not to run in the 3rd district because basically she would lose the election. Yeah,
and by the way, I've been telling her since middle of April. I get along fine with Lauren, and it wasn't personal for me. It was always a math problem. So as an engineer and as a financial advisor, I'm pretty good at math. And it dawned on me back in April, she could not possibly beat Adam Frisch.
Yeah.
So that was one of the reasons I got into the race. Another reason is that Lauren had her abilities focused on everything, it seemed to me, but bringing tax dollars back to our district. So in 2022, she brought back $1.1 billion fewer tax dollars to the district than the average district enjoyed in the state. And every district has about the same population.
Yes.
And this is a massive district, and it's very impoverished. I could tell you stories all day about our travels. But that works out to $5,800 per family of four that Lauren left on the table back in D.C.
Yeah.
Now that's money that could have been used to fix our roads, to fix our bridges, for rural hospitals, for outreach for elderly patients, and on and on and on. Mm-hmm. To build a dog kennel down in Walsendorf. Or Walsenburg, yeah. I mean, wherever we go, there's needs that aren't being met that could have been met had Lauren kind of focused more on that. So that's one of my big issues. And then I'm a different style than Lauren. Lauren was ranked 433rd out of 435 Congresspeople by a Georgetown University poll in terms of bipartisanship. My very first plank in my platform is to instruct my staff to reach across the aisle to all other Congresspeople, all the 434 and all 100 senators, try to put together 10 to 20-minute meetings where we could try to find some common ground to co-sponsor legislation. And I'm going to do that. My campaign manager, Eric, says he doesn't think it's ever been done before, but I'm going to give it a try.
Yeah, that's really funny. Who was 485?
435? I don't remember. By the way, they were all Republicans. It's a Georgetown study. So take it with a grain of salt. But she was at the back of the pack.
Yeah, she's at the back. Yeah. Well, and I know the Republicans had the policy of earmarks, whatever they call them, congressional directed funding. But I argued, and when I was working for Congressman Tipton, we didn't have earmarks. They got rid of them, and then right when he was out, they brought him back. And we were talking about how you can use that really to help out somewhere like the 3rd District, because we have some of the poorest communities and counties in the country and some of the richest counties in the country.
Right.
But there's no real middle room.
No, there is not.
It's the extreme. It's one or the other. And I get the philosophy of earmarks are bad and this and that.
See, I disagree.
I disagree too. I know where they're coming from, but the money's just going to go back in anyway.
Yes. So that was Lauren's point to me initially back when we first started doing Lincoln Day dinners together. If I'm proud that I didn't bring that extra $1.1 billion back to the district because now it didn't get spent. It got spent in New York City and Chicago and San Francisco and L.A. So the other issue, Brian, is this. 72 cents of every dollar the U.S. government spends is income redistribution. Yeah. Right? So the discretionary spending, along with servicing our debt and paying for our military, is 28 cents on the dollar. 72 cents on the dollar. You can look at it. Now, that includes Social Security, Medicare, and stuff, but it is income redistribution. So for me, I think one of the two primary responsibilities of a congressional representative, number two anyway, is to claw back those tax dollars and bring them back to your district. I really do. The primary thing, after Lauren announced a couple of weeks ago, I was on hold. I was on queue to be interviewed by Christy Burton Brown, our former GOP state chair. And I'm listening to some of these people, these candidates that had previously announced at CD4. She's interviewing them, and a couple of them were unhinged.
Oh, yeah.
They were off the charts, not happy that Lauren had announced. And it dawned on me that these guys have lost sight of what the job description is. And the job description of a congressional representative is 3 letters. It's 1 word. It's you.
Yep.
It's you. And it's listening to you. Well, that's the fact. I mean, that's the way I view it. So as we go around, I've changed my speech now. It's no longer a speech where I sit there and talk about the stuff I want to talk about. I throw that out there as in come back and ask me, the 4 or 5 things that are really important to me. But really, I'm there to listen to what other people's questions and needs are.
Well, when you're going through the 3rd District, and I've traveled it for 15 years, pretty much nonstop, what are you hearing from the people? What are people's concerns? What are the constituents, the voters, whatever you want to call them? Politicians' concerns, mayors and city councilmen, county councilmen, it's housing. Yep.
Okay. And my point on that is people tend to think 2-dimensionally. They think of land. Neoliberals still think of wealth is two-dimensional. If you have this part of the pie, they can't get to it. Mm-hmm. It's really three-dimensional now. There's ways to create wealth without owning land.
Yeah.
But the politicians, they think everybody needs to have a house. I'm like, no, find a place to build a 6-7-story apartment building. It's much more efficient, much more cost efficient, mm-hmm. and can house a lot more people. So that's my answer to those people, and I would help them if they're serious about it when I get to Congress, find the funding to do just that. But I don't think we should build little blue houses all across the fruited plain for people that can't afford them. Let's get people into safe housing in nice, clean, new apartment buildings. The issues that we hear from individuals, a lot of January 6th, was it an insurrection? That's really a very big one. What else, Eric, would you say? Immigration, yeah. I mean, that's probably the biggest one, especially more so I find over here, mm-hmm. In the south east part of the state. So I have a whole comprehensive immigration reform program. Immigration's a big issue. I mean, in my little town of Carbondale, Colorado, we have 130 Venezuelans living under a bridge.
I saw that. Somebody sent me that article, and I had no idea that was going on.
So immigration nationwide, last year, Joe Biden spent $451 billion on immigration. Put that in perspective, Reagan's first-year budget was $562 billion. Mm. I realize that was 41 years ago, but still, this is a massive problem.
And what did he spend that money on? Was this going towards, immigration and border control?
I didn't read about the breakdown. I just read the gross number, and it is gross.
Yeah.
I mean, come on, it's nuts. So you have to, if you enjoy a little Schadenfreude, you kind of have to chuckle at these sanctuary cities and states that are being inundated with illegals.
God,
so
New York City,
yeah,
the one that comes to mind.
So by the end of his first term, and pray to God his only term, he will have allowed in somewhere between 12 million and 14 million people. Think about it. That's just massive. I mean, put that in perspective. The population of Colorado is just under 6 million.
And I like to separate it too. So when we're talking about immigration now, we're talking about basically the open border policy and people coming over here illegally. We're not talking about the immigration, whereas it goes towards agricultural workers, seasonal visa workers and stuff. And it upsets me sometimes when those two get thrown together because it's immigration, but it's two separate issues.
Sure it is.
And there's different ways to approach each side of it. And I think in the rhetoric, when you get political about it from the Dem side, even the Republican side of it, they kind of throw them all in the same pot, and it shouldn't be that way.
Well, we allowed 1.13 million legal immigrants in 2022. Again, by the end of Biden's first term, it'll be 12 million people. And to break down why, I use a lot of math. I'm an engineer and financial advisor. But typically about half of immigrants vote when they're given the opportunity. Mm-hmm. So if you let in 12 million, that means 6 million will vote. 2/3 vote Democrat, 1/3 vote Republican, which means 4 million will vote Democrat and 2 million will vote Republicans. So they're going to let in 2 million net new Democrat potential net new voters. And in the meantime, we will have suffered somewhere around 450,000 fentanyl deaths. And I said fentanyl, but that's other synthetic opioids too. But that's 450,000 opioid deaths to get 2 million new voters. Think about the callous math. They know the math. Yeah. So my idea is build a wall. Finish building the wall, enforce the border. Don't let people in illegally. Mm-hmm. That's all there is to it. Change the asylum laws. You have to apply for asylum in your country or someone else's country, not I was going to say mine, not our country.
Yeah.
The drug dealer, the last drug dealer that handles the poison that kills one of our kids of military age, that drug dealer has to be dealt the very harshest penalty, if you know what I'm saying. Mm-hmm. Okay. Finally, tariffs. I don't believe in using tariffs for trade protection like Trump did with steel. Mm-hmm. It added 800 steel jobs and it eliminated probably 80,000 other jobs. So it doesn't – trade tariffs don't work. However, for national security, I'm all in favor of using tariffs. So my idea is this. We know that about 97 to 98% of the chemicals to make the fentanyl drugs come from China. That's where they come from.
Yeah.
Okay. We know that 97% of these fentanyl drugs come up through the southern border from the Jalisco and Sinaloa cartels. That's where it comes from.
Yep.
Let's stop making it our problem where we lost 106,699 kids of military age, and that's not a coincidence. China's softening up its target. I do believe that.
Yeah.
And so let's stop making it our problem and make it their problem. I say we start with 50% tariffs on all goods and services from China and 50% tariffs on everything coming in from Mexico except for produce. I got that from a cold call, actually. Woman's like, well, where would we get our food from? We live paycheck to pay. Okay, let's exempt your produce.
Yeah.
So in 3 months, that would double to 100%. Another 3 months, 200%, 400%. At the end of a year, it's 800%. Yeah. So even Jeff Hurd probably wouldn't pay $360,000 to buy a $40,000 Jeep Cherokee assembled in Mexico. You got it?
Yeah.
We will put them out of business. It will be quick. It'll be painful for all involved, including us. But nobody right now, Brian, is speaking for these 106,000 dead kids every year.
I know.
Nobody's speaking for their parents, their grandparents, their sisters, brothers, their spouses, whatever it is. Nobody. And the reason for that is, by the way, it's the equivalent of 35 9/11 style terrorist attacks every year on our soil, and nobody cares. And the reason why is there's a death today in Portland, there's a death in Denver, there's a death 5 in Chicago. It's spread out all over the place. There's no one place that reporters can go and report on it if they were even inclined to do so.
And it's where people are desensitized to it.
Yeah, exactly.
You remember 2 years ago when somebody OD'd of fentanyl and you'd see the scary videos and commercials. It's like, oh my gosh, that's insane. Now it's like, whatever. Yeah,
my son lives in Parker, commutes to Denver 3 or 4 days a week by train. And he says, Dad, it's every day somebody's smoking. I go, what does it smell like? It smells like cat urine.
Yep.
And he says, he just has to get the heck out of there, So it's ridiculous. It's because we have a wide open border. Now, the left will tell you that all these drugs are coming through ports of entry. No. The ones they catch are coming through ports of entry. For every 3 illegals that come in that are captured or whatever, met at the border, another one comes in on the side.
Oh, yeah.
So for every 300,000 that come in that we know about, there's another 100,000. That's where these drugs are coming in.
Yeah, we had a Mexican cartel specialist come on the podcast last year, and he was telling us about, how they get the fentanyl over, how it's literally slave labor. It's like, we'll get you over the border, carry these backpacks, and then we'll pick you up over there. And they're forcing people to do this, which is just horrible, giving kids backpacks of fentanyl, basically.
And then you look at the tens of thousands of kids that have disappeared.
Yep.
I mean, where's AOC?
Yeah, I know.
And you almost have to ask yourself, sorry, folks, I'll be your first congressman with a sense of humor, but you almost have to ask yourself if Hunter Biden isn't involved in this.
Yeah.
And the big guy maybe getting 10%.
Yeah. Well, there was an interview with, I think he was an Army guy. He was a National Guard out of Texas when they mobilized the National Guard down there, and they had some Green Beret unit kind of go down and help them. And what they were doing was guarding the border. But what they were really doing was like pulling people out of the river that were dying in the river, And he said that they've found a group, and you have the coyote or whoever's leading them over. They're carrying drugs, and they're almost over the river, and you have these families with kids. So you have all these soldiers, and one of them was the one that jumped in, and I think he drowned. He was like 19. As soon as they saw him coming up, the coyotes, the cartel guys, they grabbed the babies and just threw them in the river. So all the National Guard guys were like, what the heck, and jumping in trying to save these kids while they grabbed their backpacks and took off the other way. And he brought up and anybody that's seen like Sicario or any of those movies.
They're great.
The tactic where they, they'll send 3 trucks to get caught and then pass 7 over here, while they're getting caught. And it always cracked me up, even when I worked in Congress. It was like, we've had this many people illegally across the border, right? Mm-hmm. Like, how do you know that? And they're like, well, we caught them. I'm like, how many did you not catch at this time? Like, that people forget that number that gets thrown out there, whether you agree with it or disagree with it, that's like a fraction.
Sure.
It's shoplifting.
Yeah.
For every candy bar shoplifted, only 1 gets caught out of 10. Mm-hmm. So it's the same
thing.
That,
right.
And it's interesting. There must be an election coming up soon, because you're seeing, even on the Democrat side, some of these congressmen, senators, say like, we really need to fund Border Patrol better and give them more tools and resources. And, even the Biden administration, like, we're we're building the wall.
They're selling off pieces of it is what they're doing.
I know, but it's interesting that's only gets brought up during a presidential election.
Not for me.
I know.
I mean, this has been a big thing for me for years.
From the side, I'm talking the other side.
And again, folks, nobody seems to be advocating for these dead kids. And I want to be that person.
And it's as simple as, some 18-year-old out partying, buys something, not buying fentanyl, and then dies.
Yeah.
Or
I actually have a friend. This kid was a codeine addict, and his best friend was a opioid addict, and they're in some halfway house, trying to recover. One of them went out and hooked up and got the codeine. The other one got whatever he got. And the one that did the codeine was fine, but his buddies started choking and spitting and dying from the fentanyl. So he starts to give him mouth to mouth. Guess what?
He gets it.
He did. He's died.
Yeah.
So it's just,
And they've even snuck it in prescription drugs.
Oh, for sure.
Like asthma medication I can't afford to buy Advair or whatever, so I'm going to go to Mexico and buy a bunch of Advair for my kid. And then it did happen where it was asthma medicine was fentanyl. It's just...
You can't party like it's 1999, can you?
No. And it was bad back then.
Yeah.
I'm like cringe every day when my kids go to school.
Oh, yeah.
And it's that.
With my kids, they were all pretty successful in high school, and I sat them down in my office, the week before they're headed out to college. I'm like, look, study hard, get your A. Get your A's in your exams. Go out and party all you want. No pills, no powders, no potions. Not all of them listen.
I think mine are listening okay so far, or at least they're really good at hiding it right now. But
just to finish up on the immigration. So we did let 1.13 million in legally in 2022. I say let's really control the southern border. We'll have let in 12 million unskilled laborers. We've checked that box, I think. Let's bring new people in based on merit. I say triple it because we need workers, and we need people that when they show up on our shores, they can help us immediately.
Yes.
Not cost us $451 billion. We need doctors, no lawyers. Plenty of them.
Too many lawyers.
Doctors, nurses, code writers, truck drivers, carpenters. Again, people who can immediately help the bottom line in America.
And would you be opposed to streamlining that process? Because after COVID, you saw an uptick in some of the ag community and even the skilled community where you had people that have been working here seasonally for years, decades even, and now they're here illegally because the federal government shut down during COVID and wouldn't process their visas and stuff. And I've always advocated that, do it right, but I think that process really needs to be streamlined because it's
every process in this country needs to be streamlined. Yeah. Seriously.
Yeah,
we're so bloated with government. We're the largest government in the world.
I know.
It's ridiculous.
That ever existed.
Yeah. So every process needs to be streamlined. There's red tape everywhere.
Yeah. And it's, it used to be 3 months to get your visa approved. Then it went to 6 months. Then it was like during COVID, it was like maybe in a year you can get in. It's like, how am I going to go work my job that I'm needed for?
So you asked me, what's going on in the district. 8 out of 10 people in this district live paycheck to paycheck. I don't like that. I think that's bad. I've been a financial advisor for 36 years. So I guess, by the way, got to put a shot out there for a fellow opponent of mine here. There are 9 engineers in Congress out of 535 people. Not to worry, though, because there are 175 lawyers.
and probably one of
the top opponents here is a lawyer, as I'm sure you know. But anyway, I know what causes inflation. It's high energy prices and it's printing money. And that has to stop. We need to at least come close to a balanced budget. So that's an issue. Now, a thing that drives us nuts as we travel, there's less than 50% cell phone connectivity in this district. Yes. And we are working with one of the two businesses that built out cell towers in the nation in the 1990s. And they have told us that you need less than 1/4 as many cell towers in rural America because there's not as much traffic. So the typical radius of a cell tower, let's say here in Pueblo, is 6 miles. In rural America, it's 24 miles. But for some reason, you can't get that through the brains of the people that regulate the industry in Washington. Yes. So we're actively involved with that. Also have an idea that on roads where Wi-Fi, what do you call it, fiber optic is, that you don't need a cell tower. You can just simply drill down, hook up a router, put it on a pole, and that would act as a cell tower.
Yep.
So for me, it's dangerous. My wife Lori and I were headed to the La Plata County Fair back in August, and we're driving from Carbondale to Paonia. That's 74 miles without any cell coverage. Yeah. And there's a woman at Paonia Reservoir. Her truck's broken down. She's waving us down. So we pull over, and she says, whatever, truck broke down. I can't get a signal to my husband. When you get to Paonia, would you text them for us? And we did, and we picked up 2 new voters. So
yes.
But it just drives home to me. It's a safety issue. It's an education issue. I mean, if a kid's sitting in a school bus for 45 minutes, he or she could be doing their homework.
Yeah.
But if they don't have connectivity, they're not doing their homework, probably. So, there's just a lot of issues with it. And it would be inexpensive. My idea is to have the federal government probably kick in 10 to 15 cents on the dollar. That's all it takes. These towers don't go up because they're not making money. It's not that they cost a lot, but they're not meeting the margins that the telephone companies need.
Yeah, it's not of value for them to put it in, which we ran into around here a lot with some of these communities that didn't have broadband or any type of access. They'd only have one signal there, so they need redundancy. Yeah. And I won't say the county because it's a work in progress, but one telecommunications company is like, why would we do that there? We won't make any money.
Yeah, exactly. That's my point. So if the federal government's kicking in 10% a year, now they're making money. Yeah, it makes sense for them.
And the state's doing a little bit with it, but they're kind of wishy-washy. They're like, we'll give you some money, but we own it. And that's the fight right now with the broadband expansion.
Right, the broadband, the state wants to charge, I know going over to Pagosa Springs, they want to charge them $336,000 a year for that broadband to reach across Wolf Creek, whatever that pass is down there.
Yeah, it's a fight, and we've done multiple shows on it, so I won't bore you guys with this with the broadband. So, but no, that's
a big smart issue, I think.
Yeah, and you're right. I've driven that so many times. I think I was the only staff member that didn't hit a deer going to the Western Slope.
We haven't done that
Knock
yet.
On wood. Sorry,
I did pass a sheriff one night. Look at Eric over there. No, don't talk about that. Hey, we drive a lot. We're putting 1,500 miles a week on the truck.
Yeah, it's a lot. So I think when we talk to people in the Action 22 area and basically all over Colorado, one thing that they're upset, first off, the cost of living, which, we could spend 5 days talking about.
Yeah, and by the way, to quantify that, prices in the Western Slope since Biden took office are up 25 to 30%.
Yes.
We're above the national average, not the 17 or 19%.
Yes, I know. And even in some of the rural communities down here, it's the same. But safety, and it kind of goes back to the fentanyl thing, it's literally crime and safety. And I'm very disappointed that, we host the mayor debates and some of the stuff and talking to the legislature, and their attitude is, it's like that everywhere. Get used to it. Yeah. Like, we can't do anything about it. It's like that everywhere. And I know for a fact it's not like that everywhere, because we've seen communities proactively work on crime, homelessness, this type of thing, drugs, and they're succeeding. But again,
I assume that those are conservative communities.
Yes,
because where we were last night, this town has been decimated since Katrina. We were told by several people.
Yep.
Katrina, people migrated here, and at first it was pills, then heroin, now fentanyl, and this town we were in was boarded up, and it's just terrible to see. And it's because of drugs.
And you could argue. So if I was being the political nerd naysayer, I'd be like, yeah, if you're elected to Congress, there's nothing you can do about that. That's more of a state issue or a local issue. But that's not the truth. So when somebody looks at you, a voter looks at you and say, like, you know what, I'm terrified right now. And that's strong, but, my car's been broken into 5 times this month. I drive down the street, there's people yelling at me. And statistically, and a lot of the politicians that are elected now, they'll say statistically violent crime is down. But realistically, petty crimes way up.
Yes.
And that's what affects people.
Broken windows policing.
Yeah.
It works.
And
if you don't know what that is, folks, it's like my grandfather used to say, if you watch the pennies, the dollars will take care of themselves. Well, with broken windows policing, as I'm sure you know, Brian,
yes,
that if you prevent petty crimes, then you'll prevent the bigger crimes. And that's all there is to it. Giuliani showed that it worked in New York City. It worked famously, and now it doesn't.
And the police right now are only dealing with the big crimes.
Yeah.
They don't have the manpower time to deal with the petty crimes.
And I find that the place where we were last night is a Democrat county. So it's a Democrat sheriff. They have no police force in this town. I can see why they don't have two diamonds to rub together. Yeah. But you have to enforce the laws. The Democrats don't believe that, but it's a fact. Yeah. You have to enforce the laws.
And the broken window theory, or whatever you want to call it, that's like, if there's one broken window, there's going to be two broken windows, and then 5 broken windows, and then your neighborhood goes down the drain.
Exactly.
And that's why you got to concentrate on those windows and make sure there's no broken windows, no petty crime.
Exactly.
That makes it good.
Yep.
But
run a tight ship.
Yeah.
I'm a marine engineer. Run a tight ship. Batten down the hatches.
Yeah. Here's one that I'm going to ask everybody, and I always do. So I'm big on the veterans advocacy and veterans issues. The 3rd district is interesting in that we fall in 3 different veterans regions, VISNs as they call them. So you have the West Slope, and you get down to the southern part of the West Slope, and they fall in the New Mexico region, and then the West Slopes in that region and the surrounding states, and then you have the Rocky Mountain region, which is this side of the mountain, so Pueblo. But then you go down to Trinidad, and that falls in New Mexico again. So you have the largest bureaucracy that they're doing better, but I'm seeing them kind of fall back a little bit now. Like they were kicking butt for a while, and now they're 2 steps forward, 4 steps back. It seems like. So you're dealing with 3 different regions of the VA. The VA is inundated with problems. If I go to the Pueblo VA clinic and then say I'm in Grand Junction and something happens, and I go in there, they can't even see my medical records in Grand Junction, and they probably won't even see me because it's a different region.
Yet they want to roll out public health care for 330 million Americans, and they can't take care of 6 or 8 million, whatever it is.
And when the VA said we can't take care of you, we're going to send you to the public sector.
Yeah, right. I mean, that kind of defeats your argument.
I know. And they're like, and then we're not going to pay him for 2 years, so nobody's going to see you in the public sector with the VA card. But I think the VA is over bureaucratic. I think if you look
again, it's everything. Everything in government is everything. We need smaller government.
What would you do to address the problems with the VA?
First off, beef up my staff. We just walked by an office here that is supposed to be staffed by our
Congressional office.
Yes, and there was nobody there, and I'm told there's nobody there, but maybe 1 or 2 times every 2 weeks. So get your people to work and do their job and do it in the office. Show up. If it's government, then run it. I had a great boss. He said it's a business. Let's run it like a business. Yeah. Just because it's government doesn't mean you shouldn't run it like a business. There has to be accountability. There's so much government that it needs to be reined in. So I'll just for a second, let me give you another idea that I have, and we can come back to that. I try to make 1,000 cold call dials a week. But won't happen this week. And I talk to so many people, and I always end with, "You tell me what your issues are." And this one fella says, "You know what? I am so sick and tired of paying taxes on my Social Security benefits." So I looked at it. I never really thought about that before. The government sends out $1.35 trillion in Social Security benefits every year. They suck back $125 billion via taxes that they throw back into their welfare state. Remember, I told you 72% of all spending is income redistribution. So it's a way for Democrats and the left to suck money out of the Social Security Trust Fund and put it back into their welfare state. So do you remember Rick Perry's 3 agencies? Because he certainly didn't.
I don't.
Okay. Well, I'll change the names. The Department of Food Stamps, the Department of Indoctrination, and the Department of Red Energy. Yeah. So between those 3 departments, the Department of Energy, Education, and Agriculture, between the 3 of them, they go through $474 billion a year. I estimate that we could cut out we could cut out $336 billion of the $474 billion, still provide food stamps to people, but block grant that to the states. The left hates that idea. They want to be in control of it in D.C. as if they know they have the exact finger on the pulse of the needs of people in Cortez from Washington, D.C. versus the social service workers in Cortez. So let's block grant that to the states and let's control its growth. About 20% of food stamps is fraudulent, the handout. And we could cut out $336 billion a year. We could use that money to totally eliminate the taxation of Social Security, and then we could beef up the Social Security Trust Fund, which is due to go broke, I believe, now in 2032. When it goes broke by statute, they have to reduce your benefits out there, by 23%. So if you're bringing in, $1,000 a year, or a month, it goes down to $770 a month
of money that you already put in.
Of money you already
That's
put
what
in. Yeah,
cracks me up. This is money that I'm paying into right now.
And then welfare, we spend, and if you can Google this up 30 times, you can get 40 different answers. But we're spending somewhere between 1.2 and 1.8 billion a year on welfare benefits. Let's say it's 1.2 trillion and 1.8 trillion. Let's say it's 1.5 trillion. We could knock out 2% of that. My grandmothers were both right. Idle hands do the devil's work. Let's put people back to work. Let's make people earn the dole. We're paying 1 out of every 8 Americans to stay home from work.
Yeah.
That's ridiculous. Our founding fathers had no concept of that at all. So we could eliminate, another $30 billion a year. We do that for 5 years. That's another $150 billion. By the time we're all said and done, it's about $500 billion a year we could save that we could roll back into Social Security and back into Medicare to sustain those programs for a longer period of time.
And I've been seeing the mailers. They're just going against any Republican running. They say you're going to cut Social Security.
No, not at all. In fact, I'm going to start collecting in 4 months. So.
Yeah, and it corrects me. My mother-in-law calls. She's like, "Are the Republicans really going to cut Social Security?" I'm like, "No, they're not.
No.
It's an election year." They say
again, I can see cutting out large swaths of the Department of Agriculture. You got to maintain our Department of Agriculture spent $195 billion last year. $119 billion was food stamps.
Yeah,
that's why I call it the Department of Food Stamps.
Yeah.
You're still going to have to send out the food stamps, but block grant it to the states. I don't know what else the Department of Agriculture does. I'm sure there's somebody listening that works with the Department of Agriculture and you get some benefit. God bless you. Mm-hmm. I'm all for it. But Department of Energy does nothing. I just described this whole red energy thing as absolute nonsense. And the Department of Indoctrination has no business from D.C. telling us how to raise our kids in the Roaring Fork Valley or in Pueblo or in Cortez or wherever.
Yeah.
So I think that's a great idea. And the idea really is, let's not pay people to stay home from work. Let's pay the people who earned this money already that made America great. Let's pay those people. It's their turn to retire. Let's take care of them
with their money.
Yeah. So back to veterans benefits. I haven't studied the issue. We have a group of veterans for Russ, we call them, and they advise us on priorities and the like. And I really don't know that I'll have a handle on it until I get to Congress. Yeah. I can study the issue, but people aren't calling me. Do you know Greg Rippey?
Yes.
Greg's a great guy. He's the chair of the Garfield County GOP. Yeah. And, Greg told me that, Russ, as long as you service your constituents, you can be in Congress as long as you want. Mm-hmm. Anyway, also Greg told me something that I find fascinating. Russ, when they call you, they're at the end of their rope. They don't know who else to turn to. So they're not turning to me right now because I'm not in Congress, but I know the issues are out there. We have people to help advise us on it. And that's got to be a top priority. Again, those are the people that protected our country. Let's take care of them the best way we can. Yeah,
I tell anybody running for Congress, hire a lot of caseworkers because that's the most important job you do. Yeah. And, for a staffer, that's kind of like the bottom of the ladder as far as a position goes, but it's the most important job in the office. And we always had caseworkers in every region working nonstop. I think we closed out like 7,000 veterans cases.
Good for you. Wow.
Over the last 5 years.
That's massive.
And you're right. It's the people that call. They're at the bottom. Like they're
hanging from a rope and they need help.
Yeah. And the VA situation is complicated because the VA's 3 things. It's not just one thing. And going back to cutting the red tape, you have a VA health center, so that's separate from the benefits, but just the healthcare side. If you go in a normal hospital, I forget what the ratio is, but it's, for every 3 doctors, there's 1 admin person, or every 4 doctors, there's 1 admin or management person. Like with the VA, it's flip-flopped. It's like for every 1 healthcare professional, there's like 7 bosses.
That's ridiculous.
Over them,
that's another
making
problem.
A lot more money than they make.
So you need to have, I guess, consultants come in and say, look, you got to chop, and you have to have the ability to chop and get around unions or whatever else.
Yeah.
My youngest daughter, was a great ski racer, number 2 ranked downhiller in the junior ranks when she was a kid, and got injured a bunch of times. So what should I do now, Dad? I said, have you heard of dermatology? No, what's that? But now she's the chief resident dermatologist at her hospital, is moving back to the Roaring Fork Valley this year.
Wow.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
That is cool.
But she says, Dad, the clinical part it's a dream. It's just so exciting to actually work with patients. Yeah. The government, though, has come up with tens of thousands of codes for everything, and it's so redundant. And she says, I literally spend as much time messing around with the government requirements as I do, the clinician work. So, again, anything you are in any place you are in government, there's too much red tape. Yeah. I worked out of school. I worked for NAVC. I helped design the DDG-51 destroyer. Mm-hmm. I worked on the trials process for the FFG-7 frigate and for the Ticonderoga class cruiser. I worked there for 2 years, and we would take a bolt. There was a little something that was leaking on a valve, right? Mm-hmm. So we come up with a fix for it. We had to send it around to 30 to 35 different engineers, and one guy would change a comma, and then we had to do it again. All 35 engineers. Yep. So I would say that maybe we adjudicated 5% of what was there when I first got there. Mm-hmm. That's how government works. There's no incentive to produce. So that maybe you need to invite some incentive to produce. For example, as you probably know, I'm sure you know, that in the departments I worked at, if they didn't spend their full budget by the end of September, they got a cut the next year. To me, if you don't spend your full budget, maybe pay a fraction of that out in terms of an employee bonus.
That was in the military. That's range day, where you go to the range and fire 20,000 rounds of ammo, so you get it back next year. So, yeah, it was fun, but it was literally at the end of the fiscal year, load up a truck, have all this ammo, and just sit at the range for 8 hours and fire ammo.
Wow,
just like
range day. That's great.
We got to shoot it so we get it back next year. Yeah. And you see that. I've seen horror stories where you have a department in the federal government that buys, 2,000 iPads to use, and like 5 trucks. Yeah. And then they don't use them, so they destroy them. So they buy 5,000 more iPads for the next year.
One of my closest friends, his wife sold hardware, computing hardware to the government. Her busiest month of the year was September.
Yeah.
Every year. Oh, yeah. I mean, there was no going on vacation, anything.
Yeah. So as we get to the end of this, why should people support you and vote for you?
I have policies. Nobody else in this race has policies. One prominent Republican, his policy was to bounce Lauren Boebert. Mission accomplished. Adam Frisch bounced Lauren Boebert. Mission accomplished. I actually have 27 different planks, just a couple of others briefly. Our ranchers, we have 39,000 ranchers in the state, and they are terrified about this wolf reintroduction.
Yes.
So Perry Will, Perry, I'm
yes.
sure. Perry's my state senator in what is a dead blue, cobalt blue Senate last year, and a cobalt blue House, and a cobalt blue governor's mansion. Perry introduced 14 pieces of legislation. 13 of them got turned into law, and 1 got vetoed. And that was the ability to protect your livestock and animals from wolves, from predation. My idea is really simple, that if a rancher loses any kind of livestock to any state-owned animal, whether it's a coyote, a mountain lion, a bear, or a wolf, that he should be remunerated, hate that word, compensated to the tune of 5 times the market value. These ranchers, they fall in love with these animals. If you have a prize bull that's worth $25,000, these guys cry when they lose them. So I think that if we can, put $87 billion into the IRS, we could probably put a few $1 million into hiring rapid response teams throughout the Intermountain region, and they need to show up at a wolf, killing, either or wolf or bear, whatever, within 24 hours, like it's a crime scene, and they need to compensate the rancher within a week, not some 2-3 months down the road deal.
Yeah,
and that'll. Ranchers are the greatest stewards of our ecosystem, and they have to know the wolves are coming. We're not going to be able to stop them at this point. So let's make them embrace the concept, and you embrace it by compensating them for the loss. And then one last thing that I'm really big on, and this would be the first piece of legislation that I think I could get done in the House, in Washington, and that's regarding beetle kill. Beetle kill might not be important right here in Pueblo, but it's really important in the other 20-some-odd counties in our district. There are 900 million dead beetle kill trees. What's the problem with that? Wildland fires. And if you are a global warmingist, the sky is falling person, I'm not. I'm a signatory to something called the Oregon Petition, which basically says that global warming is not an existential threat. Okay, so that's not a big deal to me. But these 900 million dead trees, they put off 25% more greenhouse gases in the forest ecosystem, and it's not carbon dioxide as much as it is methane. Methane is 28 times more powerful as a greenhouse gas as is carbon dioxide. So my idea is pretty simple. Right now, of course, the government disincentivizes taking that lumber out. They charge you a small fee.
Yes.
My idea is to turn around and pay people $5 a log, whatever it is. For 300 million trees, that'd be $1.5 billion. That's a drop in our federal, right? And then, more importantly, anything they fashion out of it, whether it be a table, a chair, paneling, the paneling from this stuff costs a fortune.
I know.
Yeah. Let them sell that free of federal income taxes.
Yeah. And there was we tried to do some legislation similar to that. And we even had the support of the Forest Service on it. Like the Forest Service came and testified, this is great, we need this. And it just got shut down.
Yeah.
And it was more the environmentals, like kind of.
Yeah, they don't want you to
don't go chop down trees. It's like there is something called mitigation.
Yeah.
And that's nature's way as a fire. And we don't want that.
Right.
And
as I tell people, if we don't manage the forest will manage themselves.
Yep. And going back to one of the communities that is in the 3rd district, we had city council and county commissioners trying to get a letter of support for our, I forget, wildfire mitigation, something act, blah, blah, blah. And they're like, we won't sign that. We don't want you to cut down the trees behind our houses.
Yeah.
And it was a simple one. It actually was mitigating utility poles that go through the forest, and then some of the beetle kill that would come out of it, mitigating that. And they were opposed to it, and they're like, this is terrible. This is just evil Republican right-wing way to chop down our trees and ruin our forests.
Well, these aren't trees. They're dead.
I know. But they look pretty. And then
not really.
I know. This is what they said.
Yeah.
They're like, we like the view. And then a fire came, and they're like, hey, we need help. The fire's coming up to our utility lines in the back of our houses. And we're like, a year ago, we were trying to deal with this problem.
Tough.
And this is why. And then the next session of Congress, they signed on right away. They're like, no, we get it now.
And by the way, Lauren Boebert actually is quick to point this out. So we have 900 million dead trees here. In the 10 Intermountain State region, it's 6 billion.
Yeah.
And I estimate we can get to a third of that, 2 billion trees. Think what that would do for lumber costs.
I know.
Bring them right down.
And maybe we could reopen up some of those sawmills here.
Right.
Closed down because it's too expensive. Right. What else do you want to cover before we...
I talked about Social Security. Yeah, what did we miss, Eric? I think we covered all the big ones, yeah. Oh, yeah. This is important to us. As you know, I'm sure your listeners know, your viewers know that...
All 100 viewers know, and 10,000 listeners.
That in 2022, when Don Quorum lost to Lauren Boebert, he lost, again, 2-1, that Don immediately turned around and endorsed Aspen Adam Frisch, the Democrat, instead of Lauren. And I think that's just sloppy. It looks stupid. It makes us look, as Republicans, it makes us look like idiots. So Don, for his part, has now endorsed Jeff Hurd and is advising Jeff Hurd, I'm told. So we came up with a unity pledge that we sent out to Lauren Boebert, another person who's kind of in the race, I guess, and myself and Jeff Hurd. So this is 37 days ago now. And Jeff ignored it. Lauren agreed to abide by it within 3 days. So that on her part, now that doesn't matter. She's out of our district.
Yeah.
Last night we were at a meeting with Jeff, and I asked him point blank, will you sign the pledge? And you know what he said? He said no. So that's it. So I think, if I win the nomination and Jeff supports Aspen Adam Frisch, I just think that's going to look really bad. Or if anyone else besides Jeff wins it. So I think that it's important. If you have Jeff on, ask him. You know.
He will be on. He's our next show after
all right,
this.
Yeah. Ask him. I mean, he might say something like, well, it depends on whether or not I like the person or their character or whatever. No, to me, if you're wearing team red, you're wearing team red.
Yeah.
We can all play in the game, and if you lose the game, you still got to wear team red.
Yep.
So,
if somebody wants to find out more about you or contribute, where do they go?
Go to Russ, the number 4, CD3.com, Russ4CD3.com. Feel free to make a donation.
Always ask for money, right?
Absolutely.
I think that's the first rule. It's like, ask for money. Always.
Pain
just
in the neck.
Worst part.
It just sucks.
And that's going back to Action 22 and making action happen. I'm chasing money right now for us as well. And that's like my most hated thing to do is pull up the phone and be like, hey, you like what we're doing? Can you just send us some money? But
some people are just simply predisposed.
Yeah.
So we make all these cold calls. The other day I ended with this elderly woman and, tell me you're not a rhino and tell me this about you. And says, okay, well, send me an envelope, but make sure you put a return stamp on it. I hate when people ask me for money and then I got to put the stamp on the envelope.
I know.
But my point is some people are just predisposed to donate. They get it. Other people are no idea what it takes to run a campaign.
And it's tough. People are hurting now, but surprisingly, there's still money out there.
Yeah, there is.
It blows my mind the amount of money that some of these candidates are raising.
Yeah. And we haven't totally focused on that yet. I loaned my campaign $250,000. We still have, $225,000 in the bank. We are very good stewards of donor money. We just don't blow through it. We look at other campaigns, like a woman running in CD4. It's amazing the money they go through.
Yeah.
We're not like that. We take care of the money. And we're trying to build up a war chest so we can sprint to the finish. Yeah,
and it's tough in the 3rd district because you have 4 or 5 media markets right now? Is it 5? Five media markets. Mm-hmm. So that everybody asks, like, why is it so expensive to run in the 3rd district? I'm like, well, if you run in Springs, you have 1 media market. Denver, you have 1 in 3rd because you got to hit New Mexico, Springs, Denver, West Slope. So it's tough.
It's massive.
And so if you like a candidate, if you like what you hear, that money is important, whether it's $5 or whatever the max is.
Yeah, and make sure, folks, at least from my perspective, I think it's important, find a candidate that cares about you.
Yeah.
That cares about your needs. I mean, we're not going to be like, I'm not going to care about you more than I care about my wife and kids, but I care about my fellow citizens in the Western Slope, and I care about the problems that plague us, and I'm willing to come up with solutions
and talk to them.
Yeah.
Like talk to the candidate, especially now going into the election. They're going to be out there. They're going to be in front of people. One frustrating thing is somebody that always complains about something, my dad. And then I'm like, I literally have a congressman and senator right here in front of you. You could tell him anything that you want, any concern you have. And he's like, no, I'm fine. And you see that so much. It's like they're.
Well, I was like that too back when I was shy 4 or 5 years ago. And
but I tell people that's like
no, but I mean, people is like, well, I don't know if I go talk to that guy, is he really going to listen? Well, I do, and I know other guys do too. We listen. I started off with I think 18 planks, and I'm up to 27. The 9 new planks I got from talking to people.
Exactly, and that's why it's important to talk to these people,
right?
Talk to these candidates, and you'll remember them too.
Oh, absolutely,
like 100% that if you're in this business, you're going to have a good sense of people and you're going to remember the people you meet, and those stories are going to travel with you. So again, talk to these candidates, talk to your elected officials, because they will remember and it makes a difference.
Yeah. And I'll tell you, I've developed a knack, and I imagine most other public servants do this. I used to be lousy with putting names and faces together. Mm-hmm. Man, I've so improved because you sit there and you stand there and you listen, and you're like, okay, that guy's name is Brian, and this is his concern, and
that's your job too.
That's
the most important job.
This guy is fantastic. I have a great campaign manager. Good. I mean, he's a slave driver, but we're having fun together.
Yeah,
when you travel around in a truck for 25 hours a week with someone, you get to know him pretty well.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. Well, thanks for coming on. And if you like what you hear and you want to learn more, go to the site. Making Action Happen does not support or endorse candidates during an election season. But
if he were going to endorse one, it would be me.
He said it, not me. But we do support all members of Action 22. So if you're a member of Action 22 running for office, please come on our show. We'll give you the platform and talk to us. The views and opinions on Making Action Happen do not necessarily reflect the views and opinions of Action 22, its board, or its membership. And with that, we'll see you next time.
Thank you very much, folks. Thank you, Brian.